Having just hit early access on Steam, Temtem's not just sparked interest for its similarity to Pokemon, but also for how it improves on its formula. As a next-gen, multi-platform take on the idea, it's ripe with potential, with PS4 and Xbox One editions also in the works, plus Switch down the line. The setup is uncannily similar though, yes, at least on first glance. You travel the 6 islands of the Airborne Archipelago, fight fellow Temtem trainers, catch wild creatures in open grass, and then ultimately trade them in the open world. Temtem gets all the basics right then, and above all, it looks captivating with its cel-shaded style that evokes Zelda Breath of the Wild. Developer Crema goes further though. It weaves an MMO framework into the experience, while also putting the Unity engine to work on more ambitious visuals on PC. Certainly more so than what we saw in Pokemon Sword and Shield on Switch. And that's the main point here, it's not finished. Its launch is marred by glitches, startup issues, and lengthy queues to get a place on the servers, all of which I've bumped into. Teething troubles basically. And equally you'll see areas bluntly marked out as work in progress, on signs leading to a cliff edge. For a £30 outlay on an early access game, this is par for course though. But when it's up and running, there's a surprising level of polish to what's already there, especially on a visual level. It's also exciting for the same reasons Ark Survival Evolved or PUBG were on their arrival. You accept the roughness around the edges, the incompletion, for the promise of what's coming next with each update. Already the team has dangled the idea of new improved animations on Twitter, coming in the next few months, and who knows what else down the line. So what do we have? Well, it's great to say the basics are tightly nailed down already. There's some excellent tutorials that eases you into the rules, which are essentially Pokemon's down to the rock paper scissors nature of its creature types. 2v2 combat is the standard, and everything is very clearly guided, right down to the tour of the first town. The goal of collecting all 161 Temtem is delivered, in no real disguise from its inspiration, from an elderly gent in your hometown who offers you a choice of your first 3, and from there, away you go. Speaking of which, the total number of Temtem is another part that's very much work in progress. Out of the 161, only 80 are actually in the game for launch, but that's enough to get started. On a technical level, clearly, the style falls closest to Zelda Breath of the Wild's, albeit with Unity features running over the top. Indeed, Unity's really defined itself as the go-to engine for more artistic, non-photorealistic style games in recent years. We've had everything from Cuphead to Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and of course to ukulele games, and it's hard to fault it as a toolset for such a range of styles. It also gives Temtem the foundation to build on its visuals in the future with each update. We've already mentioned the improved animations are coming, though already there's a lot going on here to celebrate. Let's count the positives first. On the surface, it looks basic. Clean, pleasant on the eye, with almost pastel coloured tones for grass and water. Look closer and you realise though it inherits a lot more from the engine feature set to make it stand out. Bushes animate, there's screen space reflections on water bodies, there's atmospheric effects like depth of field, and even multicoloured petals floating across the first island. And everything, down to the contours of each grass tuft, actually casts unique shadows to the ground. There are other highlights too. From the character creation screen, you can see hair and apparel all swing, bounce and sway to motion. All of this combines to energise the world in a way that the Pokemon series just can't match right now. On top of that, well, running at a full 4K here on PC at max settings, in presenting that cel-shaded style, Temtem's a league ahead of the dynamic 1080p in Pokemon Sword and Shield on Switch. PS4 and Xbox One versions are announced of course, though there's no telling how high those or the Pro and X models will push their resolutions. I can't imagine it'll be too far removed from what we're seeing here in core settings. Besides resolution, I mean the textures are set to ultra here and they're not too outlandish. For now on PC though, having such a clean presentation at up to 4K is a breath of fresh air after jumping from the Pokemon series. It's a huge point in its favour. Also, it helps hugely with the decent draw distances across the game world on PC. The big hook here is Temtem's online integration though, the MMO aspect. Yes, the servers do have issues, and in my case, it involved a long queue to get in, whittling through thousands of players on my first try. After that though, really the issues have been minimal. As I covered in my last Sword and Shield analysis, the online play there really needed work, with only 4 players allowed in one instance. Just as disappointing is that meeting a player in the wild areas only rewarded you with an item drop. Actual battling had to be handled through matchmaking lobbies, and so the interaction was really quite limited. And that's not to mention the struggling performance on Switch. Temtem, on the other hand, tackles this by opening the world up to countless other trainers. The concept of a Pokemon MMO is much closer to being realised here. It's great stuff, and with the promise of clans coming in the future, it looks like it's living up to that promise. No doubt, there's a few things Sword and Shield excels in by comparison. For one, it's a shame Temtem has no direct camera control, meaning you're left with that traditional top-down view. That's one of the big advantages of Pokemon since its 3DS incarnations, and on Switch that right stick let us properly take in the Galar region. Equally, we don't have any form of dynamic weather or altering time of day within one place. Now, in fairness, it appears later islands have set weather states. According to Kickstarter updates, islands like Arbury are hit by constant rain, so some variety is injected into the game that way at least. It also makes sense from an MMO standpoint to simplify the status of weather when all players are in one spot, especially if it affects the battles. Still, it's not quite as dynamic as what I'd expected. All told, there's also a lot of catching up developer Crema needs to do to match the magnitude of the Pokedex. The fact there's only 80 right now, next to the 400 or so of Sword and Shield, it's really just a matter of time before the team can match that huge legacy. The next few years will show how well that bears out. Hitting 161 Temtem though is a respectable target, I'd say, in sheer variety. And say what you will about the designs themselves, the universal use of cel shading makes the world more visually consistent than the latest Pokemon titles. From the terrain to the water to the characters, it all beds in properly. It's also refreshing to see every one of these areas loads in quickly on PC, going from interiors to exteriors. It's all looking hugely promising. What distinguishes Temtem from its inspiration is clear, even if it falls short in its fixed camera and limited creature roster. It's the seamless string of updates to change the experience that excites me most. Much like, say, Ark Survival Evolved or PUBG, the game's core is set in stone as an early access game, but it's set to be dressed up with more lavish features. Given attention, it'll only grow upwards and outwards in scale and depth. And also, it'll be fascinating to see where it stands next to Game Freak's follow-up Pokemon game years down the line. In fact, we should see them compete on the very same platform. A Switch version is penned in, though seemingly the release date there is pushed back to sometime in 2021. There's more to say on Temtem as it jumps to new platforms, and how the Unity engine adapts alongside its online features. But for now, that's the lowdown on where the project stands. In many ways, it delivers a next-gen Pokemon in waiting. The visual features like SSR, character physics, dynamic shadows, and even the approach to cel shading are just a pleasure to see. Plus, the basics are robust enough for it to go the distance. So, let's hope it does. But that's all from me. If you did find this analysis useful or insightful in any way, please feel free to like or subscribe. And of course, don't forget to hit the bell to get notifications as any new video lands. To get a high quality version of this video, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net. And to get in touch with me, John, Rich or Alex, just use Twitter. But from me for now, thanks for watching.